It's time to get back into the suffering. I wanted to play Resident Evil 4 again, so it was time to bring out a challenge. For this challenge, I was allowed to only use the knife, starting pistol, and random explosives that I found in barrels, boxes, and of course the local birds. My Resident Evil 4 playthrough started out normal enough, by violently assaulting the nearest random villager I could find, stealing his stuff, and jumping out of his window. It was at this point I realized he called in backup, and I had to defeat my mortal foes. Upon defeating these foes, I made my way towards their village, where I was greeted with a friendly hello. I realized that my tactics would not work here, and I needed something better, so I ran the village around in circles, like an absolute hero. Until Bingo Night interrupted our marathon. This was prime opportunity to loot. There was a shotgun in the first house that I entered, but I could not take it, because if I took the shotgun, they may give me shotgun ammo, and that would be against the rules of these challenge. So we pressed onward, finding our friend Lewis in a very precarious situation.
Hello there.
We then found our actual, real best friend. We didn't want to break this to Lewis. It was the Merchant Man. This allowed us to upgrade our handgun to epic proportions. Wait a minute, this feels the same. What the heck? I feel like the Merchant might have ripped me off here. One day, Merchant, you'll get yours. One day. I can't believe the Merchant ripped me off. Well, at least we get to do some fishing here to calm my nerves. This is probably a good time to bring up that this was actually my very first time ever playing Resident Evil 4 with mouse and keyboard. Every other time I've played this with a controller. And even though it feels really janky on a controller, it feels potentially even more janky on mouse and keyboard. The QuickTime events in particular are very strange, half of them being okay and the other half being very, very awkward. In order to do some of these, you have to hit both the left and right click on the mouse at the same time. That one is by far the more normal one and not too bad, because most of the time I was aiming anyway, so I just inadvertently dodged. However, our other prompt is C plus X on the keyboard, which your fingers are almost never going to be on unless you have extra fingers on your left hand, and if so, then congratulations. But taking them off the standard WASD keys, this is just very awkward. It also becomes extremely awkward to run in this game, because that requires you to hold down the shift key, which again, if you don't have multiple fingers, that might be a problem, because you have to turn with A and D. Turning to the right with D was not very difficult for me, so I could run very long sprints so long as I can only turn right. However, as soon as I needed to turn left, that's when things became very difficult. A similar problem occurred while I was fighting this giant fish monster here in the lake. Upon defeating the fish monster, Leon decided to do his best impression of having his pancreas exploded. I think he did a fantastic job, 10 out of 10 performance there, Leon, and he proceeded to pass out. After our long night, we took the boat back, fighting a giant along the way, with our doggo friend that we saved earlier. And with our powers combined, we were able to... Oh, hey, look, I won. I remember this guy giving me a lot more trouble on other playthroughs, and so we moved on. We found our primary objective, Ashley. And then we refound our best friend, Lewis, once again. Here we took on our hardest challenge yet, the cabin. So at this part, I kind of just farmed Lewis until I could get a whole bunch of ammo, ran around in circles until I could eventually kill enough things, and then we sort of just left. So I ended up with more bullets than what I originally started with. Our first big fight and our first true boss was the Big Cheese, the leader of this town. And this was the first time that I ever used grenades. Well, besides to clear up the local wildlife, of course. With this showing of explosives, he was so impressed that he dropped his eyeball for us. We took this as a sign of victory and moved forward. After this, we came to the door, which required the eye, and I remember there being a truck here, and I thought I might need a rifle for this part, but I found out you can destroy it just by sacrificing Leon's pride and his body. With this great diesel foe out of our way, we moved on to the castle, and with this we grew even stronger, showing our most powerful technique, the suplex. The suplex came in handy. We used it on every enemy that we could. In all honesty, the castle kind of blurs together for me. Maybe it's because of all the constant suplexes. I can't remember anything else besides the constant suplexes. I do remember one room in particular though. The room with the double Wolverines. This was an extremely difficult room. Not because the Wolverines were incredibly tough, but the best way to navigate the room was always turning to the left. Which, once again, turning to the left is very difficult. Also, these guys are bullet sponges and they ate up almost all of my ammo, so by the time I got through it, I barely had any bullets left. On to Virgo, our next epic foe to face, and I bravely ran away from him until the elevator showed up. El Gigante showed up once more to make my life rough, and at this point, I was completely out of bullets, out of grenades, but not out of hope. I also found the most overpowered item in the game, a ladder. Turns out that ladders are very busted in this game, and they should probably get nerfed in the next patch, whenever that might come around. After this, the usual happened as you could imagine. We found Ashley, we lost Ashley. We saved Ashley, we lost Ashley again. I died multiple times to quick time events. And worst of all, Lewis left me to raise Ashley all by myself. Also, I ran out of ammo again, and I had to knife a bunch of face huggers so that I could kill this castle gremlin here. It took me an insane amount of bullets. After this, it was on to the final push, on to the military base. Ladders, once again, proved to be more powerful than the most well-trained zombie soldiers. With the new knowledge, the military released its most powerful weapon, the regenerators. A zombie that has an insane amount of health can regenerate its limbs. In a single sentence, a perfect being. They only had one fatal weakness. Like a house cat, they are drawn to laser pointers. With this knowledge, I was able to flank them, move them around, and most importantly, run away from my problems. Also, it turns out you only have to kill one regenerator throughout the whole game, so I just threw all my grenades at this one and just kept shooting him until he eventually died. I also tried to buy a rifle at one point so that I could at least see where the parasites were and see if you could shoot them with the handgun. Turns out you can. That's not a thing that you're allowed to do. After this, through the power of my knife, kicks, and of most importantly ladders, we managed to hoard an insane amount of bullets. With all these bullets, I knew that Krauser stood no chance. Also, kind of surprisingly, I didn't die to his QuickTime events whatsoever. This was really weird, I guess, just because I could keep my fingers off the WASD keys. That was handy. Also, during Krauser's main fight, there is quite a few ladders, so once again, ladder technique kind of overpowered, kind of too strong. 500 stabs later, Krauser fell, and then there was only one boss left, Sadler. At the start of this fight, I ended up having like 200 bullets to actually fight Sadler with, and a handful of grenades, but it was at this point I realized that flashbangs wouldn't have any effect on him. How could I beat a boss like this? There was only one way to defeat him. Heavy construction equipment. As the old saying goes, live by the girder, die by the girder. In all seriousness though, I actually didn't know if I could beat Sadler without using the special RPG, because I think that's the only way that I've ever killed him, just because it's there at the cutscene. But turns out you don't really need to do that. Just keep shooting him and then shanking him with the knife, and he'll die eventually. He can take a lot of abuse, but he will die. And so concluded my challenge run. We were successful, and I didn't even have to cheat, which was kind of weird. Usually I have to cheat for these type of things. At long last, this called for a celebratory RPG to the sky. I hope that hit a pigeon, or at least a seagull. Some sort of flying animal.